My name is Stanley Stewart. Most people know me as Goose. Been a coal miner for 34 years, last 15 with Performance Coal at the Upper Big Branch Mine in Montcoal, West Virginia, and I am a Massey employee. I was underground April the 5th when UBB exploded. Luckily for me and my crew, we were able to escape. I'm here to speak for my 29 brothers who did not make it out. This tragedy should never have happened in America today. The April 15th explosion was a 1920 style explosion, and we should be beyond that. The only reason 400 men didn't die is because of the mechanization used in coal mining today. Something needs to be done to stop outlaw coal companies who blatantly disregard the laws. Many things were wrong at the UBB mine. Management regularly violated the law. Some examples. Concerning advance warning on inspector arrivals, a section boss would be called from outside and he'd be told it's cloudy outside or there's a man on the property, meaning there is an inspector outside. Get things right to pass the inspection. In 2009, we were made by Chris Blanchard, the president of Performance Coal, to cut coal going into our air supply. We mined this way for over 2,000 feet, and several months later, we were allowed to mine the legal way. On January 4th, 1997, an illegal air change was made during our shift. An overcast was knocked out, short-circuiting our air, and it caused an explosion. It wasn't as big as April the 5th, but I thought I was a dead man, and I know it was covered up. Around 03 or 04, there was a bleeder that spewed methane in the mine. The methane readings were 5% at the power center and at least 20% further back in the mine. We were made to sit underground for nearly an hour before management let us leave the mine. When we'd moved the longwall to a new face, we were always made to load coal before all the shields and ventilation were in place, so someone could call Mr. Blankenship and say, we were in the coal. In the months before the explosion, I worked on Headgate 22. My section foreman consistently got low air readings. He would complain to upper management. He would be berated, told to go back to work or he would lose his job, and the air was never fixed, so he quit. The longwall worried me because of the constant ventilation problems, and with so much methane being liberated and no air moving, I knew that that area was a ticking time bomb. There were at least 2 fireballs on the drum of the shear on the longwall, according to separate reports of miners working those shifts. That meant methane was building in the area, proving ventilation problems and possible methane monitor problems. I've worked the longwall in dust so thick I couldn't see my hand in front of my face and couldn't breathe because of improper ventilation. I once asked the assistant coordinator why we didn't have proper air on the longwall. I was told, it's funny, you're the only one to say anything about it. My response was, that's because everyone is too afraid they'll lose their jobs if they say anything. In my years of working for Massey, I feel they've taken coal mining back to the early 1900s, using 3 principles: fear, intimidation, and propaganda. I know personally that Massey sends a safety director to the hospital to pressure miners hurt on the job back to work and have them sit in the office so their accident doesn't get listed as a lost time accident. This bill needs to require truthful reporting because with a fabricated safety record, MSHA can't target the right mines for a pattern of violation. In my first few years at Massey, I saw more men maimed and killed than in my 20 years in the Union. This is why the UMWA was formed in 1890, to protect and give miners rights. A coal mine is the worst place in the world to work without rights, and at Massey you have very little rights. You knew if you stood up to them, you'd be out of a job. This bill must be passed to give all miners rights. If this bill's passed, hopefully miners will feel they can stand up to the Massey Empire or other road companies and protect themselves without retaliation. The current system of pattern of violations must be fixed, so the outlaw companies must be made to understand that they can't continue to put miners' lives at risk to turn a profit. It puts some teeth in the law. It makes retaliating against miners who report violations to MSHA or refuse to work in unsafe conditions subject to a fine, and by making retaliation subject to criminal penalty. Outfits like Massey will always find a way to fire you regardless of the laws. That is why it is important to have rights to challenge any unfair firing in an underground coal mine. With a union, you have that right. Without a union, this bill gives miners protection to fight firings. This bill must pass to keep companies honest or to make them pay the price. Partisanship needs to be set aside on this legislation because human lives are at stake. 29 families are suffering from this needless explosion. Their communities are suffering from their deaths, and I myself am suffering. In closing, I simply ask you to remember what the Constitution says: of the people, by the people, and for the people. People's lives are at stake. It's very serious down in those mines, and those people need protection. All I ask is that you do the right thing and help them. Thank you.